Thank you, Jackie. Thank you all. As many of you know, the Nilgiris is home to some of the best schools in the country. And something that is great fun always in some of the schools are the youth leadership camps and programs. They are great learning experiences. I remember long ago one particular exercise where all the young people were lined up and they were told that they had to get from point A to point B. And there were many obstacles and puzzles on the way, which they had to overcome. Finally, after a lot of effort, all of them got to point B. And the people who got to point B first were, cheered and congratulated. Then the camp director came to the front, and when everybody was silent, the camp director said, "Who told you that this was a race or a competition? I wasn't grading you. What should have taken you 5 minutes took you 1 hour because you all thought it was a race. If you had worked together as a team, one team, all of you would have got to point B in just 5 minutes." Isn't it true that from a very young age, we think life is all about competition, is all about comparison, and it ties us up into knots, causing much anxiety, stress, and frustration. You know, Jesus once had an issue like that with two sisters. It's a fascinating story. It has to do with competition and comparison. The story is found in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. I'll read some of it. Now it happened, as they entered a certain village, a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came up to Jesus and she said, "Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me." But the Lord said to her, "My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There's only one thing to be concerned about, and Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her." Now, usually when we read this story, we think of these two people as, two distinctive characters. One sort of contemplative, reflective, tranquil, and the other productive and a high energy kind of person. But there is much, much more to this story than just that. The problem that Martha dealt with is not so much the list of things to do, but the attitude with which she was doing it. And that begins to shine through out very quickly. Verse 38 of Luke chapter 10. Martha welcomed Jesus into her home. Did you get that? Martha welcomed Jesus into her home. This is Martha's moment. This is Martha's big moment. It's interesting that Luke says Martha invited Jesus into her home. Not Martha and Mary welcomed Jesus to their home. Not even Martha, Mary, and brother Lazarus, who all lived together under the same roof. No, Martha took charge. Martha stood at the doorway and welcomed Jesus and his disciples into her home, her kitchen, her house. And she had a special event planned for Jesus and the disciples, a big dinner. So she escorts Jesus into the living room. She had him sit down. She had the disciples should sit down. And after the preliminaries, she must have got up and said, I'm using a little bit of imagination here, sanctified imagination, I hope. And she must have got up and she must have said, please excuse me, someone's got to do the cooking. And so what does she do? She gets up, goes to the kitchen and begins preparations. We don't know quite what happened in the kitchen, but maybe the the Hebrew carrot and ginger soup that she had carefully prepared got burnt. So maybe she had to redo the whole soup menu again. This was a big dinner, and this was Martha's moment, and the soup was a very important part of it. She must have imagined the moment that Jesus would taste her special soup and everybody pausing, and Jesus would say after tasting the soup, this is heavenly, this is divine, this is the broth of angels. So now she had to remake the soup. She relit the stove and began to prepare the ingredients. And then she probably suddenly noticed that she hadn't served the tea to the guests. She had prepared it earlier, and now she quickly grabbed it and entered the living room. She began to serve Jesus and the disciples. She looked around. Nobody had missed the tea. Everyone seemed busy. Peter and James and John were sitting around chatting, chuckling. And right in the middle, sitting there, was who? Mary, her sister. Nobody seemed to notice her. Nobody seemed to miss her or the tea. Anyway, she served the tea quickly. She walked right back into the kitchen. The soup was getting hot, and so was she. She began chopping the vegetables, and the knife was coming down hard. Her thoughts were, I suppose, why can't someone help me? Look at her sitting there. She knows I'm slaving here in the kitchen. And as time passes, Martha's moment becomes Martha's resentment. Resentment. She resented the fact that she was doing all the work and Mary was sitting there just listening. Does she not know there's work to be done? As moments pass, Martha's frustration bubbled up inside her. And Martha's moment, Martha's resentment becomes Martha's meltdown. Meltdown. Probably with wooden spoon in hand and wearing a kitchen apron, she marches back into the living room. She looks around. Every male in the room knew exactly what was happening, and all probably sat up straight. Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. silence. No disciple spoke. Mary didn't speak. She looked down. And Jesus looks up. Jesus looks at Martha. Okay, question. What happened to Martha? What do you think? I know we don't have much time, but it'll be nice to have some feedback. What happened to Martha, who just moments ago was welcoming everybody into the house? What transpired? What changed her? What do you think? Can some people unmute and speak?
She was not getting any attention.
She was not getting any attention. Yes. Any other thoughts?
She had her priorities wrong.
She had her priorities wrong. Okay. Any thoughts from the men? Or anybody?
She was probably looking for immediate appreciation.
She was probably looking for immediate appreciation. Wow, all very good answers.
I think
Okay,
she wanted Jesus to give Mary a shout.
she wanted Jesus to give Mary a shout. Why aren't you helping your sister? Okay. Right. Let's see what Luke says. Did anybody want to say anything?
Sorry, maybe she was intention. She wanted to give a good food to Jesus. So she was not able to finish quickly, so she could have asked her.
Right, Lily. Lily is a professional housekeeper. She knows what she's talking about. Okay, anyway, let's look at what Luke says. Luke says, Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She had big plans to make a big impression with a big event, but she ended up making a big mess of it all. She became so worked up. She became so upset and worried over all the details. You know, isn't it ironic that she was in the presence of the Prince of Peace, and yet she was the picture of the opposite, stress and anxiety? What was Martha's mistake? It's already been said from different people. Let's step back and consider this very quickly. Now, is this story telling us that it is a sin to cook a good meal? That it is a sin to be hospitable? That it is a sin to be responsible or to be organized or even to be ambitious? No, no. Martha's mistake was not even the request she made. It would have been right for Mary to help her sister. But there was something in Martha's attitude, something in Martha's tone, something in her perspective that caused her to spiral downward. I don't know what the word is, but maybe the word that best fits is the word, compound word, self-promotion. As one of you said, immediate appreciation, self-promotion. She had gone from serving Jesus to promoting self. Instead of celebrating Christ, she was celebrating her big dinner. And the focus had gone from honoring Christ to promoting self. Self-promotion is all about me, is all about self. Look what I can do. Look what I have done. Self-promotion does not have much latitude for people who are different from me. You know, they need to do more. They need to help me. And Martha's mind was full of, see how unfairly I'm being treated. Her attitude so soured her that she actually, did you notice, got bossy with Jesus. What did she say? Tell her to come and help me. Can our service turn so sour that we tell Jesus what to do and begin to tell other disciples how to act, how to respond? It's not a very pretty situation, is it? Of the two sisters at this moment, Martha and Mary, which of the two would you rather hang out with? Yes, me too. This self-service, this self-promotion, this creates a sour Christian, a sour servant. I wonder if you and I have a little bit of Martha in us. And if the purpose of this story and many other stories in the Bible is to warn us to be careful and not to slide in our intent to serve Jesus into a posture into which we are really serving and promoting ourselves. This is a slippery slope. The branch of Christian service, this is what a famous preacher once said, the branch of Christian service so tightly intertwines with the poison ivy of self-service. I'll say that again. The branch of Christian service so tightly intertwines with the poison ivy of self-service. Sometimes it is hard to tell where one stops and the other starts. Maybe that's why the apostle was so intent in what he said in the little reading that we had earlier. You know what he says? And I liked it when Ruby said, do nothing. And she emphasized nothing and paused. Absolutely right. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. Vain ambition. Vain ambition, you know, it creeps in on the cat's feet of Christian service and turns gifted Marthas into miserable mumblers. Have you ever sensed a spirit of Martha within you? It would be nice to pause and hear experiences from different people. But we're running short of time, so I'll go quickly. Maybe I'll just share one experience. Many years ago, I received an invitation to speak at a retreat. You know what had happened? At the 11th hour, their speaker had canceled, and they needed someone to come in and fill in for their speaker. They asked me if I'd be willing to come and fill in for their guest speaker. What do you think was my default reaction? I must confess, my default reaction was, fill in? I wasn't your first choice? You mean I'm your substitute speaker? Yes, my reaction was ugly, sad, self-centered. But then I had second thoughts. God reminded me of many things, especially of things that Jesus had done for me especially. And slowly I realized what a nauseating, un-Christ-like attitude I was displaying. I'm glad to say that God won the battle. Consequently, I had one of the most fulfilling of days I've ever had. Since then, I've come to understand that the one quality that Jesus wants his children to have, probably above all else, is humility. Humility, It's not a very popular word nowadays. Yes, humility, especially in the face of provocation and insult. When self-service takes over, Jesus is not served. Do nothing out of selfish ambition. Nothing means nothing. We got to be on the watch. We got to check our motives. And what is Paul's antidote to this? In humility, value others better than yourselves. Make it a point every time you see a person walking with Christ, determine they are more important to the kingdom than I am. They are more important to the kingdom than I am. I'm not God's VVIP. You are not God's VIP either. We are treasured, we are loved, we are bought by God, we are indwelt by His Spirit, but none of us is indispensable. God really doesn't have to have your service or mine to do His work. In fact, Jesus said, if you don't speak, you know what will happen? The rocks will cry out. The rocks, yes. He's got a million alternatives. Remember in the Old Testament, on one occasion, when the prophet was hesitant, what happened? Who preached? Not a man, but a donkey. Yes, a donkey preached. Romans 12:3 says, have a sane estimate of yourself. And sometimes the word sane is translated sober. Don't get drunk on your own importance. Have a sane, realistic understanding of your place in the kingdom. You have gifts. Mary has gifts. Peter has gifts. We all have gifts. And God can use any of us for any of His purposes. As I finish, there are many applications to this story. I could mention many, but I'm going to mention or suggest just one. And here it is. Can you take time? Can you take time to make a list of all the people who made a difference in your life? Every person, every teacher, every relative, every friend, every coach, every preacher, every neighbor, anyone. And against each name, write a few words. Because of you, I learned this. Because of you, I'm better at this. And very soon, as you begin to do this, you will realize, wow, there are a lot of people who helped me to be who I am today. I am who I am because other people cared. And none of us are in this all alone. No. Once we have the list, I'll suggest go further. Let those people know. Send a text, a message, write an email, or even call. You'll make a lot of people happy. Thank them. And also thank God that He has all types of people to do all types of work. And whenever that spirit of Martha comes up, when we think it's our big moment, may His Spirit remind us that sometimes it is right to be a Mary, to slow down, to sit at the feet of Christ, and to listen to what He has to say. So you play your piano music, I'll play my guitar music, and let's see if we can play together. And when we do, I have a feeling we're going to enjoy the evening a lot. And what's more, God will be mighty pleased with His grateful and humble servants. Thank you. Thank you.